In Season 1, Episode 9 of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, the show introduces us to something that would change the literary perspective of the series forever: race coding. Character coding is a literary process that communicates information to an audience about a specific character without it being said explicitly out loud. For example, you don't need to be told that Apple Bloom is a child to understand that she is a child. She's short and mature, has a high-pitched voice, and goes to school while her older siblings do not. So race coding is a practice of showing the racial influences of a character, even if that character is not human. In the aforementioned episode, entitled Bridal Gossip, we are introduced to the character of Zecora. Zecora is a zebra that has an African accent and is adorned in genericized, vaguely African imagery to invoke the stereotypical depiction of a witch doctor. So despite not being a human, what human racial identity is this meant to be invoking? That's right, Zecora is a very black-coded character. Now it's important to remember that just because Zecora is racially coded, it doesn't mean that every character in this series has a racial identity in mind. In fact, there's only a few that have any defined real-world cultural influence. There's influence not just from Africa, but also indigenous America, Saudi Arabia, India, China, and many more. But despite its very reserved presence in the series, it didn't stop fans from pondering about the hypothetical racial identity of the main, non-coded characters. This conversation was especially popular when the characters actually got human designs through the Equestria Girl series, but they bizarrely retained their coat color for their skin. It's not like they haven't considered giving the characters real skin tones, as concept art for Equestria Girl shows Twilight Sparkle as a woman of color, which I think is really cool. But making them different flavors of wacky colors wasn't some sort of passive-aggressive attempt at eliminating diversity in the series. It was just because Hasbro wanted to compete with the rising popularity of the Monster High dolls. But hey, years later have since passed, and Hasbro handed off their licensing for high-quality humanoid anime figures of their G4 characters to Kotobukiya, giving us brand new human interpretations of the MLP characters. Cool, I wonder what direction they will take, especially since they have more creative liberty. What the fuck is this? Why are all of them not just white, but pasty white? There are only two people of color, and they are light-skinned. Sun-kissed, if anything. Speaking of sun-kissed, what happened to Sunset? Why does she have Donald J. Trump spray on tan? Wow, you thought you were so cute, making the Princess of the Night one of the only black ones. These just straight up suck. Yeah, I mean, the sculpting is impeccable, but man, they really couldn't let go of the generic anime white women. I know most people see white as the quote-unquote default skin color, but I feel as if you could do so much more. This got me to wonder about if the My Little Pony characters, specifically the main six, adopted any cultural influences that could inform their hypothetical racial identity. We've seen things done similarly for a variety of queer characters, so who's to say this isn't a similar situation? Now before you go and whine in my comments about me being a woke soy boy, I'll just have you know that I'm actually a woke cow milk drinking woman. I'm in your walls, there isn't anything you can do to stop me. Starting with Twilight, we obviously have our Equestria Girl's concept art of her having brown skin, but concept art is just that, a concept. So is there any other visual indicator of her being a woman of color? Well, I always had the headcanon that Twilight is biracial, specifically because of her hair. You're gonna hear me talking about hair a lot in this video, so bear with me. As a biracial person myself, half black and half white, it takes a lot of nurturing and care to keep that flat matte look that Twilight has. But its ability to poof up as much as it does so easily is an indicator that it needs constant conditioning. Hair and maintaining hair is a big part of the black experience, and for biracial people, it has its own set of challenges. When I was a kid, I had a lot of curly hair, but when it was cut off for a clean buzz cut, it would only grow out straight, so I had to train it to be curly again, which took an embarrassingly long amount of time. Twilight's hair being able to have such distinct states and textures rings similar to the experience of biracial people. Next is Rainbow Dash, who is one of only two characters who I couldn't construct any identity for. You can really make any headcanon for her racial identity and they'd all be equally valid. But personally, I've always been a fan of Rainbow Dash having somewhat darker skin. She's in the sky all day close to the sun, of course she would be slightly more melanated. But a character I found to be slightly more compelling was Applejack. Now the Apple family isn't all comprised of yokels. There are many apples across many cultures and accents, but most fans associate Applejack with being your typical white country farmer, which is a fair assessment. I thought that too until I rewatched The Perfect Pair. Though the rivalry between the apples and the pears is just a typical family feud, some of the language used felt pretty racially charged, don't you think?
No daughter daughter of mine is gonna make goo-goo eyes at an apple.
I'm obviously reading way too deep into this, but if you wanted to read Applejack as a biracial character, you absolutely can. And also just look at her mother's hair, come on! From one farmer family to another, we have Pinkie Pie. Y'all know what I'm about to say it with me now. Look at her hair! She even once wore afro puffs, you guys, come on, that is a black woman. I initially thought she was Afro-Latina because of the seemingly fluent Spanish she spoke in the episode Pinkie's Pride, but it turns out that it was just complete gibberish. Now, one roadblock I hit in this headcanon was the rest of her family. They don't really share any similar attributes to Pinkie Pie, considering that all their hair is flat, but if you look at her mother, Cloudy Quartz, you can argue that she wears her hair up to preserve it, similar to black women. Once again, these are all just random interpretations of fictional cartoon horses, so I don't think I need to go into the specifics to try to prove myself. This is all just for fun. We can just go ahead and skip Fluttershy. She's pretty racially ambiguous, you can really make her anything. But Rarity is much more interesting, because I believe she is the only one of the main six that has intentional racial coding. That is to say that I think Rarity was deliberately coded to be white. I'm not even trying to be funny either, just hear me out. In the episode Spice Up Your Life, Rarity participates in the time-honored white person tradition of gentrification. Gentrification is a process by which a privileged class, typically rich white people, occupies a poor urban space, typically one populated by minorities, and changes it to be more appealing to that rich predominant class. The issues that can stem from this is removing all previous cultural identity and making it hard for the poor minorities that already live there. In the episode, Rarity visits a struggling restaurant called The Tasty Treat, which has been neglected by customers because of its cuisine being too foreign to the ponies of Canterlot. The restaurant is obviously Indian coded, with The Tasty Treat's owners literally being named Saffron Masala and Coriander Cumin. Wow, I can't believe J.K. Rowling found her way into the MLP writer's room. Anyway, Rarity comes in to change the restaurant to make it more bland and boring, absorbing it into the Canterlot osmosis to appeal to more wealthy customers. Obviously, the lesson of the episode is that gentrification is wrong, and that you should respect other people's cultures instead of trying to make it your own. But it's clear that they try to position Rarity as a character of white privilege. Yeah, that's right, I disguised a video about ponies to talk about systematic racism. Who's the soy boy now? I could go on and try to break down other characters who I think have unique cultural influences, but I'd be here for too long. I'd actually love to hear some of your headcanons in the comments below of the potential race of some of these characters, maybe even some characters I didn't cover in this video. But that's all the time I have for today. Thank you for watching. I've been May, and I'll see you next time.